Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well out there. With the remake of Final Fantasy VII now upon us, fans were pretty surprised to hear the reveal that it is in fact considered to be part of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, something that the people at Square Enix had put together in the mid-2000s, being a series of new games and movies to add to the lore and stories of the original, or ruin them depending on who you asked. The first game to be released under the label was a mobile-only game, before Crisis Final Fantasy VII. Unfortunately, it was never released out here, as our phones were not considered good enough to run them. What we did get after Advent Children, however, was this game for the PS2, titled Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII. It would star Vincent Valentine, an optional character who quickly rose in popularity among the fanbase, partly due to the mystery behind him, and the fact that he just looks so dang cool in that cape. But the fans are very mixed when they discuss it. Heck, I didn't even play it all the way through the first time I tried it in 2006, and as a die-hard fan of the original Final Fantasy VII, I'm still baffled by that. So what happened? Was it just the fact that it was a shooter when this had previously been a JRPG? Or was there more to it? Let's take a look and see if Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII was really that bad. Released in 2006 for the PlayStation 2, Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII is a third-person shooter with RPG elements, starring Vincent Valentine and featuring a new story that mainly takes place 3 years after the events of the original Final Fantasy VII, and thus 1 year after the movie Advent Children. Your goal is to guide Vincent through various areas of the game, such as Kalm, Nibelheim, the old Shinra headquarters, etc., while trying to learn more about a mysterious group known as Deep Ground. Apparently, Shinra had a secret operation going on underground for over 3 years, all to create super soldiers through the use of genetics. Because of course they did. Now the organization is after Vincent. Why? He, because this was never mentioned before now, carries what is known as the Proto-Materia, another special one-of-a-kind materia just like Aerith's white materia, which allows him to tap into the power of chaos. If you played the original Final Fantasy VII, you'll remember that this was the name of Vincent's ultimate limit break attack. This is also said to tap into the power of Omega. When the game begins, we're not entirely clear on what Omega is, just that its existence is known due to the writings of the Cetra, a group of ancients, which were later discovered. It is revealed that Vincent was injected with this by Lucretia during the time of Vincent's tragic death and rebirth scene in the original Final Fantasy VII. Now that I've already confused you at less than 3 minutes into this video, let's pull away from the story for a bit and talk about the game's other qualities. Controls are simple but can take a lot of adjusting to in the beginning. While the left analog stick moves you and the right analog stick moves your camera, R1 fires bullets from whatever type of gun you're using, R2 reloads them, L1 uses any materia you have equipped, although there's a few to choose from, L2 lets you switch between your weapon builds, X is your jump button, circle is your melee attack, square allows you to dodge or crouch, and the left and right buttons on the D-pad are used for scrolling between and using various items you come across. You can also quickly bring up your map with the D-pad's up button. You can also pull up a menu with triangle to configure your weapons build, pull up the map, and use items. Finally, you can use R3 to toggle between third-person mode and first-person mode, as well as use the button to zoom in if you have a scope attachment. There's also a setup for mouse and keyboard if you're willing to go that route. The game also gives you the choice between making your aim completely manual, semi-automatic, and fully automatic. I mostly preferred using manual, as I'm no stranger to shooters, but admit there were a few times it was better to switch back to semi, particularly during one boss fight about 3/4 into the game. It all sounds functional enough, but when you actually see it in action? The opening cutscenes, which are visually very impressive by the way, showcase Vincent doing all kinds of acrobatic feats, like jumping up extremely high to finish off a helicopter in a few shots. When you actually start playing, though, Vincent seems to have forgotten all about that, and now has trouble going over small boxes less than half of his size. The amount of invisible walls in this game is straight up jarring, and will absolutely take some people out of the experience within moments. Even stranger is the fact that the US and PAL versions of this game were given a double jump mechanic, despite the fact that it doesn't actually do anything, since Vincent still can't jump over most obstacles. In fact, it only makes it look even more ridiculous, since you now jump even higher than the length of the obstacle. These gates aren't even close to being taller than Vincent, and yet you still have to find card keys to get around them. The gameplay also has some very strange design choices that I'll do my best to describe here. For one thing, your ammo counter, it's not exactly accurate. Here you'll see that every time I fire a shot from my gun, it actually takes away 3 bullets of ammo instead of 1. While this does technically go with the design of his gun itself, I can't think of any good reason to implement it this way, as all it will do is confuse the player as to how much ammo they actually have left before needing to reload or find more. The melee combat is also quite strange, as unlike the firearms, it has no form of targeting system whatsoever, making it very hard to connect with some enemies. You can perform either a 3-hit ground combo or a 3-hit aerial kick combo. Each one of these makes the exact same sounds. Every single time. Devil May Cry, this is not. It doesn't help that the majority of your time will be spent walking down long, narrow corridors that all look exactly the same as the other. I was originally so excited to see parts of Final Fantasy VII's world finally come to life in 3D, only to be shocked at how dull and bland everything looked. I spent the first 3/4 of the stage in the Shinra mansion of Nibelheim, not even realizing it was supposed to be the mansion with how shockingly different and boring it looked. Same goes for Calm Village. The artistry and most of all personality of these areas were all but gone. If the walkways were simply a little wider, or Vincent didn't take up so much space on the screen, the whole thing probably wouldn't feel so claustrophobic, but as it is, I just can't call this a good setup. Those invisible walls I mentioned will also mess up your shots on more than one occasion, as you can see in moments like these, where I can't seem to actually hit these enemies no matter where I'm shooting them from. You'll also see that there is a dodge mechanic, but Vincent moves such a short distance with it that it rarely ever worked well for me. There's also no block option for range fire or melee attacks, so you're pretty much at the mercy of these attacks if you can't get away in time. Now, I don't think it's all bad, and there are some sections where these controls actually work quite well, especially near the very end, but it's a very frustrating setup more often than not. You'll also notice that each stage has special missions that you can put toward your point total at the end. These include all kinds of things, from escorting a little boy all the way to destroying 15 helicopters in a row. Unfortunately, the majority of these are not fun to carry out, and that is partly thanks to the enemy and friendly AI. Witness here how I'm told to protect the WRO troops, not 2 seconds before they get blown to pieces in front of me. Sure, it may have been possible to save them if I realized you needed to stay in place, crouch, and then shoot at the enemies from below the train, but how? How would I have known this? Why did I get punished for walking 2 centimeters in front of me? Unfortunately, there's even more confusion between stages. When you complete a level and it tallies up your ranking based on your performance and whatever missions you did or didn't complete, you're given a choice to convert the points you get into either experience or gil, as in one or the other. They're asking the players to choose between getting experience to level up with or getting money to use toward buying items and upgrades. I just don't understand the meaning behind it. Why? Why was it done this way? The game also gives you the illusion that you're going to fight alongside the other characters from Final Fantasy VII multiple times, especially with Yuffie and Ketchi. Unfortunately, that never happens, to the point where it almost becomes an inside joke by the game's final quarter or so.
What do you think you're doing? You have landed several clicks off your target destination. However, considering the location of the enemy, this could work to your advantage.
I can't say this disappointed me too hard, as I wasn't really expecting them to be in this much at all, but if you were in the group hoping they'd play a bigger role, you'll likely feel kind of let down by this. But you do get to play as Ketchi, though. Once. For a stealth mission. You know, those kind of missions that you hate in games like these? Yes, there's one here, and yes, it is as bad as you can imagine. I don't even want to talk about it. Oh well, at least the CG cutscenes with all of these characters look spectacular, even by today's standards. Alright, I've avoided going back to talking about the game's story long enough. It is bad to me. Very, very bad. I felt that it was extremely slow in plotting. On top of that, it effectively retconned events of the original game, making them arguably worse from a narrative standpoint. Justin, that's too harsh, you say, while clutching your imported Vincent Playart's Kai figure. Surely it has some moments that make it worthwhile. To which I say, yes, but not for the reasons you would expect. My appeal for this game went from, will it be good, to, how bad can this possibly get? I must know! Yes, the cynical side of me took over, and I actually started to have some fun once I accepted that everything happening in this was absolutely terrible. Take these new villains, the Sviets, for example. Their names are Nero the Sable, Azul the Cerulean, and Rosso the Crimson. If you didn't know, those literally translate to Black the Black, Blue the Blue, and Red the Red, respectively. If that's not terrible and amazing all at once, I don't know what is. I didn't get annoyed at Chalua's nonsensical outfit. I laughed, thinking about the fact that somehow, somewhere, a person actually approved this as an acceptable attire. Her sacrifice to protect Shulk felt completely forced and unnecessary, and I started to laugh at all of the anime tropes this game is actually guilty of using.
I'm sorry I let you suffer. For so long. Vincent, take care of her, will you?
Let's talk about one of my favorite boss fights, since it was actually well designed and provided a proper challenge. Rosso the Crimson. Ready McRed herself. This was the first time the game actually made me want to take advantage of all the skills I had acquired up to this point, and did so wonderfully. But all of a sudden, in the middle of this heated duel, I noticed something. No, I thought to myself, they wouldn't have. Would they? They did! They placed a shot machine right in the middle of the battlefield. After running up to it, I was able to completely pause the fight and leisurely buy all of the potions I needed before returning to the fight with Rosso, who was so patient with me. I have no idea who thought to place this shop here in an area that made no logical sense, but that person is now a hero in my eyes. The end of the fight was even more entertaining. Rosso could have let Vincent kill her here. She could have jumped off the platform. Heck, she probably could have even escaped at this point. But no. No, she chose to jump over to a ledge and slash it until it collapsed, just so that she could fall down as dramatically as humanly possible. I am seriously in awe over just how baffling this moment really was. And then there's Lucrecia, Vincent's former love interest. In the original Final Fantasy VII, it was implied that Hojo had originally killed Vincent and proceeded to experiment on him, putting him in this current state, while Sephiroth, the son of Hojo and Lucrecia, wasn't even born yet. She also came off as pretty passive and only thought about her son. In this game, elements were severely altered, making it so that both Hojo and Lucrecia were now in on this experiment, and that Sephiroth was about 7 years old by the time this all happened. They also made her character terrible. How? Well, I'll just let the game do the talking.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I am so sorry.
I'm 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 so sorry. I'm sorry.
I stopped getting mad every time Lucrecia said the word sorry, and started making a tally to set up a hilarious drinking game instead. Total count was 13 times, by the way. That said, I am still very bothered by the reasoning behind her choosing Hojo as a partner. Apparently, she accidentally caused the death of Vincent's father, Grymore. No, that's seriously his name, I'm not even kidding. And felt so much guilt over this that she decided she could never be close to another Valentine ever again, and went with Hojo. That's it. That's why Sephiroth was born. I just...
Oh, I apologize.
There's also Yuffie, who this game made out to be one of the biggest klutzes of the entire century. Is this really the same person who robbed Cloud's entire party of their materia way back when? Here, she can't even seem to stand up for more than a few seconds without collapsing. Oh, and let's not forget Shulk. Shulk, a 19-year-old woman with the body of a 9 or 10-year-old girl. This is who they're trying to set up Vincent with at the end of the game. Ew. Speaking of the end of the game, hoo boy. I don't even know where to begin, so I'll just try my best.
Still in the dark.
Hojo's mind is alive. Why is Hojo's mind alive? Well, the game is telling us to believe that Hojo, during the final fight with him in the original Final Fantasy VII, fused with Omega after witnessing Vincent fuse with Chaos. He apparently decided to upload his mind into an online network that never really existed before, where it would reform and carry out this fusion. This doesn't make any sense, though. The moment he's describing was, as I said, during their final fight with Hojo. In the original, Hojo had injected himself with Genova cells before their battle together, and thus before seeing Vincent fuse with Chaos. This new story is implying that he did this injection after, instead of before somehow, and also had time to implement this online data scheme before his death, which simply couldn't happen since Hojo was obviously defeated long before he would have had the chance for any of this. It was just one weird retcon after another.
Genius, I tell you! Pure genius! Pure genius!
Oh, and after seeing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, particularly any of the story arcs from 3 onward, I just couldn't look at this Hojo-Weiss connection in any other way. The final fights were definitely designed to make you feel unstoppable, and for the most part, the game pulls this off pretty well. After accepting the fact that after Diamond Weapon, Ruby Weapon, Emerald Weapon, and the others, that there was yet another weapon hiding underneath. The Omega Weapon, the last section ended up being pretty fun. You move a lot faster, your gun is now much stronger, and the whole thing ended up feeling a lot more fluid. If the rest of the game had you moving in such a way, it would have probably been a lot more fun to play through as a whole. The music by Gact helped to make the whole thing even sweeter. Okay, I still have one small gripe about this section. Why, oh why, can Vincent not simply fly up to Omega Weapon here? Instead, Vincent seems to fly toward a spot near him, and then drops down, leaving the player to run up more pathways with no way to use your wings. Then, he uses them again, to drop down to another platform section for climbing. I mean, I'm going to let it slide since this section was a lot more fun to play, but again, why? Up until this point, it seemed that Vincent actually became one of, if not the strongest character in the Final Fantasy VII universe, at least before breaking off this Chaos Fusion. I still had to laugh at the way the rest of my party cheered for me since they literally did nothing for the course of the entire game.
They're all yours now, Vincent!
If you manage to obtain the 3 reports in this game, known as the G reports, you'll also see a special secret ending, showing Weiss get carried off by a character who, at the time, we had no idea about and could only speculate on. Even stranger was that this character was played by Gact himself. The reports gave us a few hints about the character that we'd later come to know as Genesis, but we wouldn't really know more about him until Crisis Core, the next game in the compilation. That one black wing was a heck of a tease though. It's interesting to note that as of the time of this video, there has still been no actual follow-up to this sequence, as the only other game with information on him is Crisis Core, and that title takes place before the events of the original Final Fantasy VII. Even people who played Crisis Core still have no idea what his actual goal could be here, and many fans are trying to figure out if this means we'll be seeing something in the near future, now that the remake itself was confirmed to be part of the compilation. But as I said before, this is all merely speculation at this time, and if there's one thing I've learned about this series' plot, it's that you can't really assume anything. Especially since even if you guess something correctly, they could just go and retcon it out now anyway. It should also be noted that the Japanese version of the game had an online multiplayer mode, which actually helped explain very important background information on Deep Ground, and gave us a little more perspective on how they came to be. For example, a character named Argento is actually a big part of the backstory involving the Sviets. Unfortunately, we wouldn't get any of this, and instead received an extra mission mode, where we could carry out most of the same missions from the multiplayer on our own, but without any of the story information to join it. The replay value in this game amounts to how willing you are to replay the game, continue leveling up, and try to obtain all the weapons, items, and hidden capsules throughout each stage. You are certainly given plenty to do, so I really can't complain there. It's all just a matter of if you actually want to go back and do it again. So, as a whole, what did I actually think of this game? I believe there is fun to be had, but there's a lot of things you need to work around to get to that point. The narrow corridors, the weird ammo counters, and unnecessarily slow-paced and disappointing story, the bullet sponge enemies that seem to last for a ridiculously long amount of time, the Ketchi stealth mission, and Lucrezia's, well, just Lucrezia in general.
I'm so sorry!
I know, Lucrezia, I know. I believe the actual ideas of this game were in fact ahead of their time. It's just the execution that fell flat for many. If you're the type that gets an enjoyment out of quote-unquote bad games, then you may actually get a kick out of this one once you get going. There's a lot of moments one could easily consider to be unintentionally hilarious, and whether or not we like the plot changes done to the original Final Fantasy VII here, I don't, it's still another story that was set in the same universe and was still the last event to happen in it chronologically. If those things interest you, it's probably worth taking a look. But would I do it all again? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. It's not well made at all, and it held up even worse. I think I just need to look at this game like I looked at The Bouncer, for example. It's another game that made really questionable design decisions, and was not something I'd ever label in the decent category, let alone the good one, and yet I couldn't stop playing that either, so Go figure. So there you have it. There are certainly things to enjoy about this game, but you need to get through a lot of hiccups to get there, and you need to be pretty open-minded to accept some of these ridiculous plot points. Or laugh at them, like I did. I definitely enjoyed it more when I did that. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments below. I will see you all again real soon.
Just remember, I am so sorry.